It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. I really think so. And I'm gonna tell you why in another video. So, let me tell you right now. Hi, and welcome back to the House of the Stag YouTube channel. It finally happened. We finally got another teaser trailer for House of the Dragon, and that means that we're going to dive deep into everything surrounding the new show. Before we do that, however, we're going to take a closer look at the people behind the desk right now. Most people, including me, were not satisfied with the way Game of Thrones ended. There's been nothing but praise for Game of Thrones' visuals, music, and overall atmosphere, but people from all around the globe agree that the writing didn't match any of it. I've had my problems with the writing of the original show for many years. I've been bitching about David and Dan's creative choices ever since they did my boy Stannis dirty in season 5. In my opinion, they didn't seem to fully understand what George was aiming for with his main book series. It's either that or they didn't care much for it and fully embraced a more Hollywood-esque approach to it after winning pretty much every award there is. So, why do I care so much about House of the Dragon now, and why do I think it'll be good? I gotta be honest, it wasn't like that from the beginning. When the news came out about HBO shooting the Blood Moon prequel, I was ready to say goodbye to this franchise. That one got cancelled, however, and House of the Dragon was picked up. There's been some very promising news throughout the last 2 years, and it really seems like they have learned their lesson. Let's start with the new main guys behind the desk, our new showrunners, Ryan Condal and Miguel Sapochnik. Most of you are probably familiar with Miguel. He's the one responsible for the biggest battle episodes in Game of Thrones, and his episodes were the ones that made Game of Thrones as big as it was. It's good to have him working on a show that will feature up to 20 dragons, as well as a handful of large-scale battles. But who is Ryan Condal? I gotta be honest, I didn't have a clue, so I went and looked him up. While I can't speak about his writing style because I haven't watched Colony, I can definitely vouch for his love and commitment when it comes to the world George created. The man is an A Song of Ice and Fire mega fan, and he's actually a friend of George R.R. Martin. They've known each other since 2013, back when Condal was filming a pilot in the area where George lives. Here's how it all went down. I am a huge Westeros fan. I discovered those books 20 years ago. I'm a George R.R. Martin super fan. The reason that I know George, the reason he approached me with this idea was I fan-stalked him when I was making this pilot in Santa Fe, where he has a house. I knew I was going to be there for 2 months, so I just said to my agents, hey, I know George lives in the area, can I buy him dinner while I'm here? So we went out, we hit it off, he liked me, he liked that I brought a cool western to shoot in his backyard. We kept in touch and he brought up my name with HBO very kindly a couple of times because he liked me, and they spoke to me very early when they were starting the spin-off process. Imagine you're Ryan in this scenario, and 20 years later you actually get to be the main guy behind a multi-million-dollar show set in Westeros. And that's probably all because you were fangirling. Sometimes dreams do come true. Ryan also mentioned that he was one of the first writers HBO contacted when they were discussing the spin-offs. This was not about House of the Dragon though. He originally pitched a different idea. I very passionately pitched Dunk and Egg as a spin-off idea because I thought that's a great way to go. With the original series, how do you even follow it? It's so big, it's so scopy, it's so successful. The only way to do it is to go against the grain, to do this sort of lone wolf and the cub, this wandering swordsman through the countryside. That's fantastic news for me. It kinda signals a clear understanding of the world of Ice and Fire because Dunk and Egg has no dragons and no big, large-scale CGI battles. The focus of that story never leaves our two main characters, Sir Duncan the Tall and Aegon the Fifth Targaryen. It's about that human conflict, something that we'll talk about later on in the video. There's gonna be an insane amount of conflict in our new show, so this is something that will come in handy. I also agree with him. To go against the grain would be very refreshing. This is still my #1 most wanted Westeros show, and I hope we get to see it one day. It's actually in development right now. Go check out my Dunk and Egg video if you want to know more about that. So imagine your friend is an author and imagine you're adapting that book. You will of course keep in touch throughout the writing process and check if your creative choices make sense, right? Well, that's exactly what happened. Here's what both Ryan and George had to say about their collaboration. George has been really involved and also very generous with his time. It's basically like if you were making Lord of the Rings but Tolkien was around. When you make a choice, you're like, well, I told George and he said that was cool, so come at me, Reddit. I have seen comments out there questioning how much I am involved in the new series. The answer is a lot, deeply, heavily involved in every one of the new shows. It's my world, and while I have been working closely with some fantastic writers and showrunners, ultimately it is up to me to try to keep the canon, well, canonical, and to do all I can to help make the new shows great. Now, that's huge. If you remember, George completely stopped working on Game of Thrones after season 4 and rarely ever mentioned the show. He avoided questions, and I keep remembering that one time he even mentioned how he didn't even see the latest season yet because he apparently didn't have time to watch it. He then praised the writing for Netflix's The Last Kingdom a couple of days later, emphasizing on its faithfulness to the source material. See where I'm going with this? Something has changed. I believe that, at least to some extent, creative control was one of the biggest conditions of George when he renegotiated his contract with HBO. The fact that Ryan is constantly calling him to, asking for his advice, leads me to believe that we're never going to get so many big deviations from the source material again. Sure, Fire and Blood is Maester's work, biased, not to be taken as facts, but still. I think House of the Dragon will be much closer to George's vision than those last couple of seasons of Game of Thrones. Ryan seems to be very invested in the story, which is a great thing. Paired with Miguel Sapochnik's outstanding abilities as a director, this could be a match made in heaven. It seems like passion meets talent here. We will, of course, have to wait and see how it goes. We only have a few quick shots so far. I'm loving them and think it's going into the right direction, but George has actually seen a bunch of episodes of the show, and he had a lot to say about them. Here's what George had to say after watching rough cuts of the show for the very first time. The writing, the directing, the acting, all look terrific. I hope you will like them as much as I do. My hat is off to Ryan and Miguel and their team, and to our amazing cast. It's dark, it's powerful, it's visceral, just the way I like my epic fantasy. The Targaryens are in very good hands. Anticipate away, I do not think you will be disappointed. George continues. I saw rough cuts of a couple more episodes of House of the Dragon and was just as pleased as I was with the earlier episodes. Ryan and Miguel and their cast and crew are doing great work. Those of you who like complex, conflicted, great characters will like this series, I think. There will be plenty of dragons and battles to be sure, but the spine of this story is the human conflicts, the love and the hate, character, drama, rather than action, adventure. This is music to my ears. Again, the fact that George, who never talked about anything, now can't do 3 blog posts without mentioning the show and its quality is big. It's not the usual thing where the author blindly praises the adaptation of his work for promo purposes. He loves it, and that gives me so much hope. He is once again heavily emphasizing on the writing, specifically the characters. That's great news. I was worried that this is going to be an all-out battle series. Some CGI fest for the masses, but that doesn't seem to be the case here. These quotes are the reason why I'm so hopeful for House of the Dragon. I'm back on the hype train. I love this world because of the very realistic portrayal of human conflicts. The backstabbing, the political drama with all its rivalries, the great characters. It's not black and white, and they picked a great story to showcase all of that. Both fractions, blacks and greens, are full of interesting, conflicted characters. If the dialogue can make these characters come alive, this can become something very special. Something bigger than Game of Thrones. There's gonna be a separate video for this exact topic, but Thrones left out so many themes and aspects of George's world that this new show can still implement and adapt. I'm really curious to see how Miguel Sapochnik and Ryan Condal approach this. I always love getting a look behind the curtains. That's what made the Inside the Episodes so interesting. Greg Yaitanes, one of the new directors of the show, also had something to say about our new showrunners. Ryan Condal is the keeper of the story and the lore and everything, so there's a great dance between them, and it was great watching their collaboration evolve over the course of the season. The priority list from Miguel, it was always character, story and visuals will follow. The character and story is where I always come from, and the visuals chase that, because I feel like they need to be in support of what the scene is doing. Sounds good. Again, Ryan has been a fan of this world for over 20 years. He also has his own podcast and is a big film prop nerd. On one of his episodes, he was nerding out about the Targaryen Valyrian steel sword Blackfire. He even brought in an expert sword designer to help create the most important swords in House of the Dragon. It's the attention to detail, mixed with George R. R. Martin's counsel and Miguel Sapochnik's ability to make the script come alive, that really excites me. It feels like this show is being handled by a collective of talented people, rather than being a one or two man show, which brings me to my last point for today's video. Another thing that really caught me by surprise was the sheer size of our brand new writing team. George made a big blog post about them. Among other things, here's what he had to say. Fire and Blood is an imaginary history, not a traditional novel. To turn it into a television series requires a lot more work than adapting a novel or short story. The scriptwriters need to make history come alive. Ryan Condal assembled a pretty amazing team to do just that. I loved talking dragons with the team, and I was impressed with the depth of their knowledge of my world and enthusiasm for the project. So, please raise your glasses and toast our writers: Sarah Hess, Gabe Fonseca, Ira Parker, Ty Mikkel, Charmaine the Great, Kevin Lau, and Eileen Shim. I totally butchered their names, but let's continue. I should also salute Claire Kieshel and Wes Took, who joined Ryan and Ty in the mini writers room that preceded this one, before there was even a pickup. Well, that's a whole bunch of people, and I probably mispronounced half of them. I looked all of them up, and some of them worked on high quality projects such as Deadwood, Watchmen, or Brooklyn Nine-Nine before. Out of all these people, I want to focus on 3 of them: Claire Kieshel, Wes Took, and Ty Mikkel. Claire Kieshel was the one that worked on HBO's Watchmen, which means that she's no stranger to big production television. Wes Took was Ryan Condal's right-hand man on Colony. He was an executive producer for Ryan and wrote multiple episodes for the show. And Ty Mikkel, well, she's been George R. R. Martin's own writing assistant, which means that she is more than familiar with Ice and Fire. According to George, these 3 sat in the writer's room at HBO for months with Ryan Condal. They already drew a roadmap for the entire run of House of the Dragon, which is great in my opinion, and way better than doing it season by season. The Dance of the Dragons is an amazing story, but you can't drag it out for too many seasons. I think 4 seasons are the absolute maximum here, but they've worked on the damn thing for years, so let's see. Let's wrap it up. All in all, it looks like we have a very competent team behind the desk. We have almost no dialogue for this time period, which makes it interesting to see how they'll approach it. David J. Peterson, the creator of the Valyrian language, was back for House of the Dragon. Maybe they'll implement more of that, given that we have an incredible amount of Targaryens and Velaryon in this show. George is also way more involved than I thought, which is a great thing. A lot has changed, and I'm ready to give the show a chance, and to be honest, I think you should too. You clicked on this video after all, so that means you still have some interest left in you. I mention it time and time again, but the House of the Dragon Explained series is finally about to drop. We're gonna start this upcoming Tuesday with the Rogue Prince, Daemon Targaryen. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think. Are you ready to give it a chance? What do you think about our new team? Leave it down below and let's have a discussion. Take care and see you later.